Hi everyone. I hope you are doing well. I pray to God that you and your family are safe and happy. Today's story takes us back to a defining moment of World War II. This is not a story of legends or myths, but the real decisions, mistakes, and realities of war. April 18, 1942. The Western Pacific is rough and steel gray. On the flight deck of the aircraft carrier USS Hornet, Lieutenant Colonel James Harold Doolittle stands among 16 B-25 Me Mitchell bombers, medium bombers never meant to fly from a carrier, let alone strike the Japanese home islands. The plan is simple and dangerous. Take off early, fly west to east, hit military-industrial targets in Japan, then continue on to China. There is no margin. Fuel is tight. Weather is uncertain. Enemy detection would be catastrophic. Doolittle knows the risk. At dawn, the task force is discovered by a Japanese picket boat Nitu Maru. It transmits a warning before being sunk. The clock collapses inward. The launch must happen now, hundreds of miles farther from Japan than planned. Doolittle confers briefly with Captain Mark Mitcher. The decision is final. The attack will go forward. Engines howl against the wind. The carrier pitches. Deck crew signal with practiced urgency. Doolittle climbs into the cockpit of the lead aircraft. The B-25 shudders forward, accelerating along a deck far shorter than any runway it was built for. The bomber lifts, barely clearing the bow with feet to spare. One by one, the aircraft follow. There is no cheering, only concentration, and the sea closing behind them. Hours later, the coast of Honshu emerges through broken cloud. Japan is calm, factories running, trains moving, airfields on alert. Radar coverage is incomplete. Early warning is fragmented. This is the gap Doolittle is exploiting. At low altitude, the formation presses inland. Navigation is by dead reckoning and coastline features. There are no escorts, no second chances. Tokyo lies ahead, larger and closer than any training field. Doolittle orders altitude and steadies the run. Anti-aircraft guns begin to respond, late and scattered. The bombs fall incendiaries and high explosives onto shipyards, steel works, and military installations. The attack is brief, precise, and shocking. Japanese defenses are stunned by the audacity more than the damage. Doolittle banks away, heading south toward China. Fuel gauges sink toward empty. Fighters begin to rise behind them, now too late. The sky closes with uncertainty. Weather thickens. Radios are silent. There will be no safe landing in Japan, no easy recovery anywhere. Ahead lies darkness, coastlines by guess, and a promise made to crews who know they may never see the bombers again. The mission has crossed the point of return. The coast of Japan slips behind the bombers, but relief does not arrive with distance, it sharpens into pressure. Doolittle's aircraft holds low, riding rough air as clouds stack. Ahead, fuel needles sink with an honesty that cannot be argued. With the original plan land and friendly fields in, China now stretches into doubt. The early launch has stolen the margins that made survival possible. The formation fractures by necessity. Weather forces staggered. Routes. Radio silence keeps them alive but alone. Below. Fishing boats. The water. Above, the sky closes and opens without warning. Japanese fighters appear in ones and twos, probing late and cautiously. They do not press. The bombers push on, engines tuned for economy, crews counting minutes like rations. By afternoon, the East China Sea turns ugly. Headwinds build. Rain hardens into sheets. Navigation becomes estimation under stress. Doolittle calculates again and again, comparing drift to compass, horizon to hope. He knows they will not reach prepared fields today. Not with what remains in the tanks. As dusk approaches, the Chinese coast should be visible. It is not. Storm, bands swallow landmarks, mountains rise unseen behind cloud. Crews debate impossible options, ditching in black water, bailing out blind, riding engines until silence. Doolittle keeps the nose steady. He will not ask his crew to jump unless there is no other choice. Night falls hard. Fuel drops to fumes. The engine coughs. Doolittle orders bail out. The bomber climbs just enough to buy time. One by one, the crew steps into darkness over territory that may be enemy-held, may be friendly, may be nothing at all. Doolittle is last. He holds the plane until the end, then leaves it to gravity. He lands hard in a rice paddy, injured but alive. Around him the storm moves on. Other crews scatter across provinces, villages, rivers, and hills. Some are sheltered by Chinese civilians who risk death for helping. Others are hunted. Patrols close in. The Japanese response arrives now thorough, organized, unforgiving. Within days, Tokyo assesses the damage and absorbs the insult. The material loss is limited. The psychological wound is not. Air defense doctrine is questioned. Fighter units are redeployed north and inland. The perimeter tightens. In the background, decisions began that will pull resources away from the southern advance and toward home defense. The raid's reach extends beyond its bombs. For the raiders on the ground, survival becomes negotiation between hunger and movement, trust and concealment. Doolittle is carried by villagers through night paths and flooded fields, passing from hand to hand like contraband hope. He hears of crews captured elsewhere. He does not know who is alive. He does not know the cost yet. In Japan, the hunt intensifies. In China, the countryside pays for the raid and reprisals. And far at sea, carriers turn back in silence. The deck now empty, the wager already placed. The attack is over. The consequences are just beginning. Morning breaks unevenly over eastern China. Mist lifts from valleys and terraces, revealing the scale of dispersal. Crews are scattered across hundreds of miles. Some move quickly, guided by resistance networks and local militia. Others are pinned by injuries, waiting for dark. Doolittle is carried farther inland, kept hidden during daylight, moved only when rain and fog soften the risk. Japanese search columns expand. Orders are explicit. Roads are blocked. Rivers are watched. Rewards are posted for information. Where cooperation fails, pressure follows. Villages suspected of sheltering airmen are interrogated, then punished. The cost of the raid is no longer abstract. It is paid in arrests, burned homes, and fear carried quietly from door to door. Doolittle learns fragments. 1. Crew captured after ditching. Another, missing in the hills. He learns that some airmen have reached safety with the help of missionaries, and nationalist units. The information is incomplete and delayed, shaped by rumor and exhaustion. The uncertainty grinds harder than the injuries. Leadership now means silence, keeping morale intact when facts are scarce. Far to the east in Japan, assessments harden into policy. Air defense is reorganized. Fighter units are reassigned from offensive theaters to protect the home islands early. Warning nets are expanded. The lesson is clear and unwelcome. Distance is no longer defense. For planners, the raid becomes a data point that accelerates decisions already under debate. On the ground, the hunt closes around the captured crews. Interrogations are formal and relentless. The Japanese army demands names, methods, intentions. The airmen give rank and serial number only. The consequences are decided elsewhere, beyond their reach. Their fate becomes a separate thread of the same operation, one that will resolve later in silence. Doolittle reaches a secure compound after days of movement. Medical care stabilizes his injuries. He begins the accounting he has avoided, tallying aircraft launched, crews accounted for, losses known and unknown. By doctrine, the mission is a partial success at best. By expectation, it is a miracle anyone survived at all. Doolittle prepares himself for reprimand. He believes careers will end over Tokyo. Instead, the strategic picture shifts. News filters back through Allied channels. The raid has landed where it was meant to inside enemy confidence. For American leadership, the effect outweighs the damage count. For Japan, the response begins to draw lines that will pull forces north and inward, thinning the perimeter elsewhere. But on the roads and fields of occupied China, the aftershock continues. Reprisals expand. Units sweep broader zones. Civilians who helped become targets by default. The calculus of aid turns deadly. Doolittle understands this cost only in outline, but it sits with him unresolved. As evacuation plans are arranged, weather closes again. Routes change. Timing slips. Each delay invites discovery. The mission's final phase is not an extraction, it is endurance. And while strategy adjusts in distant headquarters, the men who flew the attack wait, unsure which consequences will reach them first. Evacuation begins in pieces, not plans. Weather dictates movement. So does patrol density. Doolittle is moved at night, wrapped in anonymity, passing through a chain of safe houses, coordinated by Chinese, nationalist officers and local resistance leaders who understand the risk and accept it anyway. There are no uniforms now, only borrowed clothes, altered routes, and the discipline of silence. Across the region, Japanese countermeasures intensify. Airfields are reinforced. Fighters are kept closer to home. Radar stations multiply along the coast. What was once an experiment becomes policy. The raid's lesson is absorbed not as shock, but as correction. Japan adjusts quickly, methodically closing the space the bombers slipped through. For the captured crews, time stalls. They are transferred between facilities, their status reclassified. Military logic overtakes convention. Decisions are signed far from the cells. The men wait without information, sustained by routine and resolve, aware that outcomes have narrowed. Their story runs parallel to Doolittle's path, linked by the same mission, separated by control. Doolittle reaches a forward headquarters after weeks of concealment. Messages finally move outward. Names are checked. Numbers harden. The tally is incomplete and painful. He carries it with restraint. Command responsibility is measured here not by orders given, but by consequences borne. When asked to report, Doolittle does not soften the facts. He does not dramatize. He states what happened. Back in Japan, the political effect matures. Home defense is elevated in priority. Fighter squadrons are pulled back from the south. Carrier doctrine begins to turn inward. The perimeter that once pushed outward now braces. The raid does not end campaigns, but it bends them. On the ground in China, reprisals expand into operations. Villages suspected of assistance are cleared. Networks are broken by force. The calculus of help becomes fatal arithmetic. Doolittle learns more than he wants to know, late and in fragments. The cost follows him across borders. Finally, movement accelerates. A narrow window opens. Doolittle is escorted toward an airstrip under cover of weather and deception. The sound of engines brings relief tempered by risk. Any delay could draw attention. Any mistake could unravel weeks of care. As the aircraft lifts, China falls away beneath cloud. Doolittle looks forward, not back. There is no space for reflection yet. The raid has crossed into history, but its debts are unpaid. For the men still held, for the civilians punished, for the enemy now adapting, the story is unfinished. Ahead, debriefings and decisions await. Decorations will follow. So will questions about proportional gain, unintended consequence, and the shape of what comes next. Doolittle returns to Allied control, carrying fewer answers than questions. The reception is quiet, procedural. Reports are filed. Timelines are reconstructed. Maps are marked where certainty replaces assumption. In the arithmetic of war, the raid's physical damage is measured and found limited. In its psychological effect, it is counted differently, by shifts in posture, reallocations, and fear introduced where confidence once lived. For the men still in captivity, resolution moves slowly and without mercy. Their status hardens from prisoners to examples. Legal categories are adjusted to fit decisions already made. Isolation deepens. Letters do not arrive. Names are removed from circulation. The machinery that processes them is efficient and impersonal. Strategists draw lines from the raid to subsequent choices. Fighter deployments thicken over the home islands. Patrol schedules tighten. Early warning improves. What slipped through once is not permitted again. The air defense network grows into a living system, rehearsed and unforgiving. Japan prepares for a future it did not believe imminent. At Allied headquarters, Doolittle is summoned. Expectations weigh heavier than praise. He believes censure awaits perhaps worse. Instead, the reaction diverges. Leadership understands the requirement of the moment, to signal reach, to prove intent, to restore initiative. The mission is judged on those terms. Commendations are discussed, not for spectacle, but for consequence. News filters outward to a public hungry for momentum. Headlines simplify what the field complicated. Morale lifts. For planners, the effect is leveraged space to maneuver, time to prepare. For Doolittle, there is restraint. He does not celebrate. He remembers faces left behind, villages crossed in darkness, numbers that do not reconcile cleanly. In China, The after-action continues. Counterinsurgency measures calcify into doctrine. The landscape bears scars that will not fade with the season. Aid becomes risk. Silence becomes survival. The raid's echo is longest here, far from decks and maps. Across the Pacific, carrier task forces shift patterns. Training intensifies. Coordination tightens. The idea proven in April becomes precedent boldness paired with calculation. Yet the ledger remains open. Each adaptation invites a counter. Each advantage shortens. As months pass, the captured airmen face conclusions arrived at without them. The consequences of the raid are no longer strategic abstractions. They are sentences enforced and final. Their resolution approaches quietly, shielded from attention. Doolittle receives word in fragments, delayed and partial. The knowledge settles heavy. Responsibility without remedy is a weight leaders carry alone. The mission that began with engines on a rolling deck now presses inward, personal and unresolved. The war advances. Fronts expand and contract. The thread that began over Tokyo in April still runs tightening toward an end that cannot be redirected. The final outcomes arrive without ceremony. No announcements. No exchanges. The men captured after the raid are removed from records, their fate resolved behind closed doors. The machinery completes its work. What remains is absence names without return, missions without recovery. The Doolittle Raid closes one ledger and opens another written in quieter ink. Doolittle learns the truth gradually, after the fact. Details are incomplete, filtered by distance and time. He absorbs them without comment. Leadership offers recognition, promotion, and public validation. None of it balances the account. He accepts responsibility as he always has, without deflection, without revision. The mission stands as ordered. The cost stands as paid. Strategically, the raid's imprint continues to spread. Japan's defensive posture hardens permanently. Aircraft and pilots that might have shaped battles to the south are kept close to home. The perimeter thins. Months later, when carrier forces clash at Midway, those absences matter. The causal line is not singular, but it is present. A small force, launched early, bent a larger arc. For the Allies, the raid becomes proof of reach and resolve. Not a turning point, but a declaration that oceans can be crossed, that industry and distance do not guarantee safety. Training evolves. Planning tightens. The war accelerates toward its long middle. In China, the reckoning persists. Communities rebuild where they can. Others vanish. The cost of assistance becomes part of the landscape, inherited by memory rather than documents. The raid's human aftermath cannot be measured against tonnage or targets struck. It endures outside tallies. Years later, the story will be simplified. Courage highlighted. Maps cleaned. But in April 1942, nothing feels clean. Doolittle returns to duty carrying a mission that succeeded and failed by different standards. At the same time, he does not correct the record. He allows history to decide. The sky that morning over Tokyo was unprepared. That moment cannot be repeated. The space it opened is now closed by defenses, by lessons learned the hard way. War adapts. It always does. The aircraft are gone. The decks are quiet. The consequences remain embedded in doctrine, in memory, and in the lives that never made the return flight. And as the war moves forward, driven by decisions layered upon decisions, one truth remains unresolved. Victory is never free, only delayed in how its cost is counted.